Warning, this video and all other videos on this channel are for entertainment purposes only. The content of this video and all other videos on this channel are the opinions of the creator only and do not constitute legal, trading, investment, or financial advice of any kind. Investing carries a high level of risk and the majority of retail clients lose money. Do not invest in capital unless you understand the risks and you are prepared to lose it all. Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today is still a day where we sit here and wait for the CPI print, because ultimately I think that's going to be the biggest catalyst this week. So, more or less, I wanted to go through this thing right here, which I thought was both very thought-provoking and also a little bit sad. So I'm going to go through that. Then, of course, we're going to talk about a few other things, look at some charts. But ultimately, the crux of it is, until I've seen CPI or until I've seen a confirmed cycle low for Bitcoin, then I'm kind of just sitting here and being patient. I'm also waiting for a cycle low to show up in the precious metal markets. But as ever, you know, every 4 weeks we do this, we get to a CPI week, and I say the same thing over and over again, that we should look out for games, volatility, chop, all those classic CPI up, down, up patterns that we see, or down, up, downs. So in the meantime, I thought I would just briefly touch on this, because this really sort of tugged at my heartstrings this morning when I was looking at this, okay? For this argument, we do have to assume there is a power law at play here, okay? And another assumption is you'll only be able to DCA into Bitcoin with a fixed amount per month in perpetuity, forever, right? And assuming Bitcoin price does indeed follow and mean revert to a power law with an exponent of 5.7, then that means there is a theoretical maximum amount of Bitcoin that you will ever be able to own, since the sum of the Bitcoin bought every month forms a convergent series. So if you were to start today, July 2024, the formula for calculating this is A times this number right here, where A is the dollar amount you invest per month. Below is the figure showing the same for different values of amount invested and starting time. Based on this model, if you want to reach 1 Bitcoin starting today, you will need to invest a minimum of $1,500 per month. And in 2026, if that's when you start, you will need to invest $2,300 per month. By the time we get to 2033, even 10k a month invested every month in perpetuity will never actually get you to 1 Bitcoin if we assume that Bitcoin's price is going to continue to move up in accordance with that power law. And so if you start your journey today with a $1,500 a month DCA into Bitcoin, you might eventually get to 1 Bitcoin, right? You might eventually be able to do that. And of course, if you start with a little over 3k today, then you might be able to get to 2 Bitcoin by DCAing just over 3k a month in perpetuity, right? But here's the really sad part about this. Like I said, this kind of tugged at my heartstrings for a little while, is that most people don't have even this $1,500 a month spare, right? Most people don't have that, let alone if they wait, you know, another year or two. I would say pretty much everything from where we are today upwards is unattainable for your average person, right? Your average person is not going to have $1,500 plus of disposable income they can DCA into Bitcoin every month without fail from now until they die. Which means that unless you're very well off, then you have been priced out of Bitcoin, especially if you're a DCAer. Now, of course, if you have some savings, right, if you come into an inheritance, if you win some money on a scratch card or whatever, then of course, yeah, you have the opportunity to buy a whole Bitcoin, maybe. But in terms of the DCA gang, okay, if you're DCAing less than $1,500 a month, that's it. You're basically never going to get to 1 Bitcoin with your DCA strategy, unless, of course, you've already built a significant stack or you're already halfway there. And for the people that come in at the bear market lows, at the best case scenario, next cycle, you know, like I was saying earlier, you're going to need 3, 4, maybe more K per month to DCA into Bitcoin to try to actually ever get to a whole coin status. And the reason I think this is so sad is, number one, okay, obviously not that many people have a whole Bitcoin, which is kind of sad to know that the adoption has gotten nowhere near saturation. You know, we're very, very early in that S-curve, and most people are already priced out of owning 1 whole Bitcoin. But the other thing I think is really sad about this is if you were to have started this curve a few years ago, or even less than that, at the last bear market lows, it would have taken significantly less than $1,500 a month to DCA. But think of the number of people that have come into this space or got wrecked last cycle and said, this cycle, I know what I'm doing. And instead they chose to DCA or hold big bags of altcoins. And to me, this is the whole purpose of altcoins, right? Altcoins have done their job, because if I draw this pyramid here, okay, this little section at the top, represents the people that have done very, very well out of altcoins. This section at the top represents people that actually bought high-performing altcoins, right, took some profit, and have made significantly more money than they would have done just buying some Bitcoin at the bear market lows and doing nothing, okay? But the vast majority of people sit in one of these next two levels, which we're going to call level 1 and level 2, okay? If you're in level 1, it means you probably made some money, but you didn't take profit, and now you're kind of sitting on some mediocre to average gains at best. If you're really lucky and you're towards the top of this pyramid here, you might have outperformed Bitcoin. Most of you didn't. Okay, most of you, and I know because I've seen an awful lot of comments, didn't realize your altcoins can go down 80%. And now many of you have messaged me to say you actually wished that you'd have just held Bitcoin instead, because Bitcoin has outperformed a lot of the altcoins that haven't done very well, especially after the most recent pullback. And if you exist in group 2, which I believe is the majority of market participants, because remember, even in a normal market, even in the stock market, around 90% of people don't make any money. So in altcoins, where they're even more risky, they're even more volatile, they're even harder to manage the risk on, they're more subject to things like hacks and rug pulls and all that stuff. In group 2 here is people that after this most recent pullback have held the wrong altcoins and are now down money. So whether they made money at the start or not, they're now sitting on a loss or a gain that is no better than the S&P 500, right? Like 20, 30%. Why take all that risk when you could have just DCA'd into the S&P 500? It doesn't make any sense. But this is the harsh reality. And again, if you're in this elite group at the top of the pyramid, well done, okay? If you outperform Bitcoin with altcoins, and now you've got more money than you've ever had before, and now you've got the choice to, at some point, convert that into whole Bitcoins or whatever else you're going to spend it on, a house or, you know, whatever it is you need. If you're in this elite group, I'm not talking to you, but most people aren't in that elite group. Like I said, they're in 1 or 2 where they would have been probably a lot better to hold Bitcoin, and they certainly would have been a lot better to hold Bitcoin. And this is where I said it gets really, really sad for me, because like I was saying, unless you're in that top group, unless you're in this elite group of very small amount of people that actually made money with altcoins, then you not only would have been better off holding Bitcoin, right? Not only is that true, not only is it true that it's entirely possible that altcoins, for the most part, continue down from here. And I know that's not something people want to hear, but if you really think about it, this has been my base case forever. It's why I don't have a bunch of altcoins. I've said the whole time, a handful are going to do very, very, very well, and the majority are not going to take part in this rally. And people think because they're down 80 or 90%, they can't go down another 80 or 90%. They're going to find out the hard way, unfortunately, that they can and they will. So this is where it gets really, really, really sad, because again, in our pyramid, there's an elite group of people at the top who will be going, Camel, you're talking rubbish. My altcoins have done so well. But they're completely blind to the fact that most people haven't. Okay. And where it gets even sadder is all of those people that have come into this space, been promised that they're going to belong to this group, and are now sat down here, okay, making no money from altcoins, or at least not barely outperforming the S&P, certainly not outperforming Bitcoin. Now they can finally learn from this mistake. Now that all that liquidity that rightfully belongs to Bitcoin has been put in these rubbish projects, okay, not only are they about to lose even more money, for the most part. Again, I'm not talking to this elite group of people, and I know this elite group of people really don't like anyone bad-mouthing their altcoins, right? But I'm not talking to you guys. All those people in the lower half of the pyramid, or the lower 90% of the pyramid, not only are they lost all their money, okay, but now they're priced out of holding a whole Bitcoin forever. And probably a lot of them only wanted to catch a pump so that they could actually exit it and buy more Bitcoin. And again, if you did that, well done. You belong to that bit at the top. But everyone else actually sits in here, okay? Everyone else is wrecked. And this is just the harsh reality of life. So when I said that this thing really tugged on my heartstrings, number one is because people that aren't in this space, okay, unless they earn double your average salary in the UK or the US, and then they've got this disposable income, but even then, they're not going to spend all of their income DCAing forever into Bitcoin, are they? They're just not going to do it. So unless you're in this sort of triple your average salary, unless you're a doctor or a lawyer, you can't actually afford to own a whole Bitcoin through the DCA strategy anymore. That's really sad. And I think, like I said, it's even sadder that the people have been here for a cycle or two. Some of them have even been here 3 cycles and managed to mess up all 3 of them. Not only have they not made the money they were promised in these altcoins, but now they're permanently priced out of holding a whole coin. To me, this is really, really sad. This, like I said, it's really, really tugged on my heartstrings. And for everyone's sake, I really, really hope that I'm so wrong, and that all 2.5 million of those altcoins are going to do 1,000x from where they are now, which will just about get most of them back to their prior all-time high, so people can actually make some money, so people can actually have a chance to survive in the next few years. Anyway, let me know what you think. Does this thing upset you? Do you not care? Do you think I'm way off? Are you going to call me a toxic maxi? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. This week is all about CPI for me, so if we scroll down on Thursday the 11th of July at 1:30 UK time, we have got the CPI data coming out. If this stuff is cold, okay, then I think we got the final leg higher across the board in risk. I think market's going to do incredibly well. But if this comes in hotter than expected, then not only is that bad for my hypothesis, because I am making the argument that inflation is not actually sticky, everyone's wrong about that, but I also think this is going to have a significant period of sell-off in both the crypto market and in risk assets in general. So it's going to be a very big week. I'm planning on going live on Thursday as I did last month, which was cool. The other big question for me this week is, can this current retest in crypto, and specifically Bitcoin, stick a new weekly cycle low? Can this weekly cycle low stick? Can this confirm by getting back above our trend line, back above the second angle of support? It is already back above that second angle, depending on what exchange you use. But if we can recover this somewhere in this neighborhood, you will see me go long. That's why this position is queued here. I will be notifying the members in real time with the exact stop loss level. And I'll even be adding some spot Bitcoin here as well, ready to see if we can get this. But if sticky inflation presents, if we don't get colder CPI data, if we see some kind of risk off moment, then we could be in for some downside, and it could be, for the first time in this cycle, time to be starting to get very, very concerned. So it's going to be a very, very big week. You can see here on the Bitfinex exchange, okay, we are back above the support. So the second angle is intact on Bitfinex, not on my Bitstamp chart, but on the Bitfinex one, we're back above, okay? So if that can continue, and particularly if we can see a repair come in here, something like this, okay, break above here, then it could be on like Donkey Kong. So as I said, all focus for me on CPI and seeing if we can get that weekly cycle low to stick. If it does, it may look something like this, okay? And I know a lot of people don't want to believe in this right now, but that's good. I don't want people to believe this is possible. I am still making the case that the unemployment rate is going to force these rate cuts in the not too distant future. And again, that argument, that whole idea of mine, kind of hangs on lower CPI, because the Fed is never going to say, well, unemployment's broken, we'll have to start cutting rates and ignore inflation. I don't think they're going to do that. I think what they're going to need to see is the CPI come in lower, surprise everyone, so that they can claim that they've got it under control and this was all part of the plan and they do know what they're doing. But notice how the Bank of America is doing TA on the unemployment rate, okay, with a range and a range break, okay? The level 3 members specifically know we use this setup a lot. This is a very powerful setup. So are we going to see this? Okay, are we going to see a recession? It all kind of makes perfect sense to me. And the Fed can have plausible deniability here to some degree if that CPI comes in lower. They seem, for the first time in a long time, highly motivated to manipulate that data to the downside, even if it's not organically lower, because then they can punch their hands in the air and say, we did it, we tamed inflation, rather than have to admit that they're going to have to start cutting rates to save the labour market deterioration and essentially signal that they've got no control over inflation whatsoever. And at the same time, I showed yesterday that within 18 months of seeing the final rate hike, we typically enter recessions, at least based on historical data. We are officially 12 months from the prior rate hike, thus telling us we should expect to already either be in a recession or see one within the next 6 months. If you've been here for a while, you know that this is all part of the show, this is all part of the plan, and nothing I've said so far is out of the ordinary. I continue to say the same things over and over again, but take a look at this, okay, because this is another piece of evidence in our favour that we are indeed going to get this recession, and we're not going to have this up-only liquiditous cycle into the end of next year. As US bankruptcies just hit the highest level in 14 years. There have been 346 bankruptcy filings in the US year to date, which is the most since 2010. Shockingly, in June alone, there were 75 bankruptcies, higher than every single month during the C19 era, okay? So a hard landing is now the base case. In terms of bankruptcies, we are currently more financially stressed than we were right in the midst of the C19 plunge. Really, really, really let that sink in, especially if you're one of these people that thinks, oh, yeah, Camel, we're going up until the end of next year, right? Bitcoin's going to do what it's always done. What is a left translation? Why are you making up terms? It's clearly invalidated. Well, there's not time to even see a right translation, really. That's the facts. That's the absolute facts. Unless Bitcoin is, for the first time in its history, going to trade as a risk-off asset, I don't think the market cap is big enough. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see it. I just don't think we're there yet. And of course, pertaining to the stock market, okay, long and strong continue to push. We expect this thing to continue to move up, particularly if we've got the CPI coming cold, because markets will continue to front run the onset of a cutting cycle. We will probably see a top sometime before the end of the year. NASCO's got a target of November here. I have a sneaky suspicion it might be slightly earlier than that. And then we're going to be looking for this big downside decline, this big recession, and even perhaps a short period of asset price deflation. So it's a wild time to be alive. So far, so good. Like I was saying, the big focus here is, can we confirm a weekly cycle low after we've seen the CPI data? Can we get that breakout above the downward slope in red and recover our second angle? If we can we add along something like this and a bit of spot? And then the big question becomes, okay, do we roll over and die? Do we do this and die? And that really was the top. Or are we going to see something like this come out of here? Big explosive push, giving us an opportunity to dump the whole lot. I think if this happens, this is altcoin's final chance. absolute final chance to push. And if you're holding altcoins that don't do well during this push, especially in this 8-week window after the top comes in for Bitcoin, then that is normal and to be expected, frankly. Gold is almost in the timing band to give us a cycle low. So I wonder if we're going to get some quick snap down on CPI. Something in the next 1 to 2 sessions would give us both a daily and a weekly cycle low. It'd be nice to see if we get some kind of violent shakeout on CPI and go. And then we'll be looking to get long there in the members section. And of course, the stock market still doing very much blow off top things as expected. We are getting close to a daily cycle low. And although I've got it marked up here, this is probably the most bullish outcome. It's entirely possible that we see some kind of daily cycle low in here. And then we have to start to reset the third angle later in life. We are still not fully committed to this third angle. But for now, it is the area on the chart to pay attention to. And of course, the signal remains the yields for the US. So this is the 10-year yield. If indeed inflation comes in colder and we're going to start to put these rate cuts on the table, then we should expect to see these yields come off, particularly the 2-year yield, which, as you can see, is as of yet still not signaling that cuts are going to be coming very, very late. This is the 2-year yield calling the Fed bluff and telling us rate cuts are coming very soon. And of course, the market's historically top within a couple of months of seeing the onset of a cutting cycle. So still a wild time to be alive, still looking for that cycle low, still being patient until we've seen the CPI data. Overall, I am liking the setup more and more. I think we just need to see that breakout for Bitcoin, and then everything will actually be going according to plan. So that's it from me. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you're doing well in life. And until next time, all the best. Cheers. Bye.